I'm not a particularly patient person when it comes to anything that I'm excited about or care deeply about. Not naturally, at least. If I'm on autopilot, I will recheck release dates for upcoming games and I will hunt for every last tidbit of information that I can find about them. I'll race through developing new features in one of my projects without looking at the big picture for more than a split second, which will get me in the end. And as soon as there's a viable path forward that I'm excited about, I will charge forth as fast as possible. At least that's my instinct, even if it's wildly inefficient and involves ignoring all sorts of learning opportunities. Either that, or I'll do an excruciating amount of research in order to find a perfect, entirely efficient, ideal path that will jet me to my goal in a day or less, and that path never exists. So there's a sweet spot between these two modes, and I've been working to find that spot. Today's episode is a part of that work and an exploration of how useful impatience and patience can both be in games and in creative pursuits. Once again, thank you for joining me on Game, Develop, Repeat. I'm your host, Chris. Let's get to it. There are so many games that try your patience, intentionally or unintentionally, so many that it would be pointless to list them all out. Generally speaking, any extremely difficult game does so in one way, while any mysterious or narrative-driven game does so in a completely different, much gentler way. It's rare that I'm screaming at my screen when it's just a story-driven game. And sometimes I'll be yelling, hurry up and get to the point already, especially with unskippable cutscenes, but otherwise, it's pretty rare. Now, a challenging game has the effect of making me yell at the computer much more often. But what I want to focus on here is actually competitive, skill-based multiplayer games, the kind of impatience that they inspire. Unfortunately, that means we have to talk about League of Legends, which I think I've talked about like once before on this show. I tend to avoid it. Although League of Legends is a genuinely fascinating game for a number of reasons. As a side note, I suspect that League of Legends has done more harm to gaming culture than any other game that I can think of. But I'm not talking about the colorful language or playful disrespect. I'm talking about the deep, genuine, vindictive hatred of a troll or a noob ruining 1 hour of your life. And this is what's interesting about League of Legends. League of Legends has a unique ability to put you in a situation where your main thought is, please God, let this end. I will do anything to get out of this game. And then you jump back in for another round. It's any exceptionally painful match in League tests your patience in almost the same way that attempting to fix an especially sneaky bug does, except there's time limits, there's angry teammates, and you get banned if you step away to try to calm down. It's a terrible situation for thinking clearly, and I strongly recommend stepping away and gathering your thoughts for a moment whenever you encounter that feeling while developing, maybe even while playing League if you can get away with it, but if you're idle for 10 seconds, you know how they get. But we'll chat about the development idea more soon. The precise type of impatience and hurriedness that League of Legends inspires in me is perfect for me to never learn any of the lessons that I need to learn in order to improve at that game. I remained absolutely terrible at it and weirdly confident in my choices for an embarrassingly long time. Now, don't misunderstand that I knew I was bad, but I wasn't questioning the individual choices. I was like, oh, I must not be very good. I must not be doing these things cleanly. I must not be executing, but I'm making the right choices, surely. And I believed that simply because I was never stepping away from the game to learn. I was never stepping out of the situation to assess everything that was going on. I was stuck in that moment, and I was just trying again and again without seeking to understand the game itself. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The more complicated that a game is, the easier it is to latch on to some little simple element of it and believe that it is the only factor that you need to work on. For example, in chess, opening moves. People go, all you need is to learn the opening moves. That's all you need. And then you end up not actually winning rounds unless the other guy happens to forfeit because you don't know how to close it out. But you can just focus on one thing and get super locked in on it and think, why am I not winning? I'm working on the single important thing. And this is especially important if the complexity of the game is well hidden, like in League, and you don't receive clear, immediate feedback on all of your choices, like in League. But if you can look at the totality of the game and see what the next high-value lesson is for you to learn, you can make surprising progress. I did do this on League briefly. I got a little bit better, and then I went, you know what, this isn't worth it. The same goes for any complicated skill, though. It's not just for games. I'm very familiar with this in music, where I made an interesting mistake of focusing on one high-value skill for too long, past the point of it being particularly worthwhile. I could still learn more about it and get better, but it wasn't really worth my time. Sort of like if someone's playing League and they last hit perfectly, but they obsessively practice it even more, because there's always room for improvement, right? Instead of learning about map awareness, instead of learning other skills that would multiply their ability to play the game. The real trick, I think, is learning what skills are valuable to you in your situation. It can be pretty clear in games, especially single-player ones, not as much in a multiplayer game, especially one that's as secretly complicated as League of Legends is. But what about in creative tasks? How can I, as a developer, or how can you uncover what is and isn't worth putting your attention into, and how does that League of Legends style of impatience factor into the whole equation? I don't think that there's any clear-cut, universal answer to the question, where should I put my effort? There are undoubtedly fundamental skills that large groups of developers would all benefit from focusing on, but I'm not an experienced developer, so I'm not the person to figure that out, and I'm not going to try to guess at it, at least not in public. What I will try to guess at or figure out is how to uncover and develop the skills that are most holding me back individually or holding you back individually, because that's a little closer to my wheelhouse as a teacher or ex-teacher, but I still consider myself a teacher a lot of the time. Besides, in uncovering the points of maximum potential growth is a lot more exciting and empowering to me, or it seems that way, than coming up with some kind of universal rule, because they never actually apply to everybody. So I can't guarantee that I'm going to figure it out for myself, and I can't guarantee that I'm going to make progress on it, but it's worth trying it out because it's at least interesting. So here's my first theory. The theory is that it's worth taking the time to notice two things, two types of feelings that show up when you are creating something or working on some skill. The first one is places where you feel lost, and the other is places where you feel stuck, like the Dark Souls, Bennett Foddy kind of stuck. And for being lost, it's the kind of, I'm doing what the game said to do, why isn't the quest triggering? I'm doing everything right, but it's not happening. What's going on here? That kind of lost. I've run into that a lot when I'm learning new skills. I have this feeling of I'm following the tutorials, but I'm not getting any better, or the documentation makes no sense to me, or I'm using the right tool, or I'm using this node or whatever, but why isn't it doing what I expect it to do? It's not functioning correctly. So here is my question for the little experiment that I want to run here is, what if I go from that point, the point of being lost and confused, but like expecting it to work and it's not working, to the nearest stable concept or skill that I have and explore how it's related to my problem. My theory here is that if I do that, I'm going to find something wrong with my understanding of the skill that I'm confident in. I'm a little bit abstract with this, but I'm going to try to make it a little bit more concrete. So many times in coding, I've thought that I understood something perfectly because it worked. I wasn't thinking about how I got there, really. Maybe I thought, there's an easier way, maybe, but this works, and it's right, so fine. So I thought I had a good understanding of it until suddenly it stopped working for me. It's kind of like, look, I'm struggling to come up with a coding specific example because I use Godot and other people are using other engines, and that knowledge doesn't translate very well, at least not coming from somebody like me who's pretty inexperienced. So I'm going to go with eating food. So let's say you're eating food with chopsticks and they're the only utensil that you've ever used. You're used to chopsticks. That is the only thing that exists in your mind. Then you get handed a soup. And like, you can taste the soup with the chopsticks, but you're never going to eat the soup using chopsticks, right? You have to learn about a new tool. You've got the assumption that chopsticks are the way to eat food, but it ain't working. Okay. It's a little bit ridiculous, but in programming, that's something that we do, right? We're assuming, by the way, in this scenario, that you are not allowed to lift or tilt the bowl, because we're all programmers and somebody's thinking that right now. Somebody's going, yeah, well, I would just lift it. No, I would just tilt it. Oh, I can't lift it? Well, what if one surface is touching the table? Anyway, you have to learn about a new tool. So you have to figure out, okay, well, I can use my hands, and I know that I can use something to bring food to my mouth, so I just need something that'll hold the soup. And yeah, it's overly simplified and ridiculous, but it's the general idea, right? Look at where you're stuck or where you're lost, question the assumptions, and go from there. This is my theory for finding the key points or the key spaces for growth, right? Because the number of times that I've used a difficult to work with node in Godot instead of one that's perfect for the job, the number of times that I've eaten with chopsticks because I don't have much soup to drink, right? Where I'm just like, oh, it's just a sauce packet worth of soup. I'll get away with this with just chopsticks. Turns out, feature bloat. Suddenly I've got an endless bowl of soup. But anyway, it's frustrating and embarrassing the number of times that I've just straight up used the wrong tool. It's the whole every tool's a hammer. When all you have is a hammer, every problem's a nail. It's that old problem. So take the time to step back and learn a little bit, and you'll save a ton of time. This is me talking to myself, by the way. I'm not really trying to preach to you about this because a lot of you are more experienced developers than me, and you might be hearing this and going, yeah, Chris, yeah, come on. But some of you are probably hearing this and going, oh, that might be useful. That's a good reminder. Anyway, the problem here is that I'm usually feeling impatient because I'm in the middle of what is effectively a League of Legends match in my mind, right? Or I'm convinced that I can kill the Dark Souls boss in one more try. I can just keep going. The chopsticks are working, right? There's not that. Eventually I'll get it done. I work hard. I'm a hard-working guy. I can just use these chopsticks. I'll get this done. Oh, you're telling me it's impossible? I'll show you. I'll get it done, no problem. Try me. Okay, cool. Fine. Like, I can get it done eventually. I can beat this Dark Souls boss if I keep trying over and over. But if I've said that the last 10 times and I haven't learned anything new or practiced any valuable skills, and I mean genuinely practiced, not just repeatedly failed and said, oh, it's fine. I'm getting better, I'm sure. Then it might be time to step back and rest a little bit and let yourself process the last 10 attempts. Then that's kind of that's that type of impatience that I'm talking about. It can be dangerous sometimes, but the stubborn, repeated attempts that come with it can be extremely useful. When you just go, I just have to try, and just let that feeling of frustration run the show and just go again and again and again until I get it right. Sometimes there are times to do that. Sometimes there are moments for relentless effort. But when it comes to thinking and understanding and developing new skills, I have to make an effort to pause and regroup and step away from the impatience. I have to get away from the League of Legends match in my head and go, maybe I don't have all the information. Maybe if I just approach this from a different angle, it'll be easier and more enjoyable. Well, the other part of this, sorry if you just heard my phone buzz. The other part of this is sometimes there's a little bit of pride that gets involved in it. Right? There's this little part that's like, no, I can do it. These are the tools I have. I can do it. I can eat this soup using these chopsticks, even though it's glued to the table, and it will be fine. Don't tell me I can't. I can accomplish this. You gave me this task. I'm going to do it. It's like, well, just everybody's going to have a better time if we just get a spoon. I don't know if you guys have that too, but I definitely have those moments with development where I'm like, I just get to a point where it's like, I'll just do it with a bunch of if-then statements. I don't need a loop. Who needs a loop when you've got 500 if-then statements? And that brings us to the end of this episode. This week's question is simple, but might be a little bit annoying. It is just, what have you learned recently? It's just a little learning check-in. What have I learned recently? I've learned a lot about building a computer, which I have not finished doing. Okay, this is just me ranting real quick. I got some nice computer parts, and sometimes they just don't go together right. I got this big old Noctua cooler. It's good. It's nice. I got a new motherboard. I was putting everything on there, and the Noctua cooler makes it virtually impossible to put my graphics card on my computer and lock it into place. On my motherboard, excuse me. So anyway, I've gotten a new cooler because this is just crazy. But I've learned a little bit about patience. This is what inspired the episode, because I almost made multiple mistakes that would have just fried my computer because I was getting impatient. Like I set everything up at the end of the night, and I lost a screw. And I came back to it the next day because at the end of the night, I was like, I'm just going to finish assembling this. So I kept putting stuff together, all the while knowing there was a screw in there somewhere, but going, I'll find it. Just not right now. I'll keep assembling it. What a dumb mistake. Anyway, I took the whole thing apart the next day and found the screw, lost another screw in the process, had other issues, figured out this thing, that thing, the other. Decided to get the new cooler because I was in a more patient mood. I went, okay, cool. So now it is sitting in another room, still not completely assembled. That is why my audio is a little bit janky. And that's also, I bet that came through in my voice. I bet I sounded rushed this episode because I'm trying to finish so that I can just do a little bit of work on that computer before I go to bed. But anyway, that's what I've got for you. I learned a lot about being patient while building a computer and getting annoyed at it. So anyway, what have you learned recently? Preferably something related to games or development, but whatever. I mean, I just shared stuff about building a computer. And that's everything that I've got for you today. Thank you for joining me. I am trying to make these scripted episodes feel a little more natural. I'm still playing with the formula. I know that my voice is different when reading a script than it is when just going off the cuff. And what's weird is I write these off the cuff. Like I write them kind of the same way that I talk, but when I talk, I get sidetracked like crazy. When I write it, it's much more locked in. There isn't like a second draft on these scripts, but it keeps me much more focused. And I like that, but I don't like how I feel like I'm delivering in a scripted way. Anyway, feel free to give me feedback on it in the Discord. I've only gotten a little bit, so I don't know what the wider sentiment is about it. Right now, I'm still playing with it. Might bounce back. Might just do a mix of scripted and unscripted. Maybe it's a little too much behind-the-scenes action here, but there you go. I'm pretty transparent with it. That's everything I've got for you. Thank you, as always, for joining me. Until next time, get out there, make some stuff, and have fun with it. Bye-bye.